The human ship Perseverance floated silently in the darkness of space, its hull reflecting the pale blue light of the distant star that warmed this lonely system. For 8 long months, the crew of 27 had been mapping planets and moons, searching for worlds where humanity might one day build new homes and start fresh. Lives far from Earth. Captain Marcus Webb sat in his command chair, studying the latest survey reports from the 4th planet, when Lieutenant Harris interrupted him with an unusual finding. Something was broadcasting from the surface. Something that did not match any known pattern or language in their extensive databases. "Sir, you need to hear this," Harris said, his voice tight with excitement and confusion. Webb listened as the communications officer played the signal through the bridge speakers. It was unlike anything they had encountered before, not the clean digital signals of advanced technology, not the random static of natural phenomena, but something that felt almost alive, pulsing with rhythm and what could only be described as emotion. Sarah Chun rushed onto the bridge, her dark hair pulled back in a hasty ponytail, and her tablet clutched against her chest. As the ship's lead linguist, she had been analyzing the signal for the past 3 hours. "Captain, this is a distress call," she announced without preamble. "I'm certain of it. The pattern repeats every 47 minutes, and each repetition grows more urgent, more desperate." Webb leaned forward in his chair, his weathered face creasing with concern. "You can understand it?" "Not exactly," Chun admitted, frustration evident in her voice. "But distress is universal. The mathematical patterns, the escalating frequency, even the way the signal seems to carry emotional weight within its structure. Whoever or whatever is sending this needs help." The captain turned to his navigation officer. "Where exactly is this coming from?" "The largest valley system on the 4th planet's main continent," the officer replied, bringing up a holographic display that showed a massive gorge surrounded by towering crystalline mountains. "We haven't been able to get detailed scans because those crystal formations interfere with our sensors." Webb stood and walked to the viewport, gazing down at the planet below. It hung there like a jewel, its surface painted in shades of purple and green that spoke of alien but thriving ecosystems. "The planet is habitable?" "Completely, sir," confirmed the science officer. "Breathable atmosphere, stable climate, no signs of industrial civilization or spacefaring technology. Yet someone down there is calling for help." Webb mused, his mind already made up. He had not come this far into uncharted space to ignore beings in distress. "Assemble a landing party, Commander Rodriguez, Dr. Chun, Dr. Tanaka, and a security team. We go down at first light." 6 hours later, the landing shuttle descended through banks of violet clouds that swirled around them like cosmic smoke. The signal had grown stronger during their approach, no longer just audible through their equipment, but somehow reverberating through the shuttle's hull itself, creating a deep thrumming sensation that all of them could feel in their bones. "This is incredible," whispered Dr. Yuki Tanaka from her seat by the sensor array. The xenobiologist's eyes were wide with wonder as she studied the readings. "I'm detecting massive biosignatures below, but the chemical composition doesn't match any carbon-based life form I've ever seen." Commander James Rodriguez sat calmly in the pilot's seat, his steady hands guiding the shuttle through increasingly turbulent air currents. The former military officer had seen combat on 3 colony worlds and prided himself on staying cool under pressure. But even he felt a strange nervousness about what they might find. Sergeant Maria Santos and her 3 Marines checked their weapons with practiced efficiency. They were not expecting trouble, but humanity had learned harsh lessons about being unprepared when encountering the unknown. The shuttle broke through the final cloud layer, and the valley opened up before them like a vision from ancient mythology. The team sat in stunned silence, unable to process what their eyes were showing them. Dragons. There was no other word for them. Massive creatures that looked as if they had stepped from humanity's oldest legends circled through the air on wings that seemed to catch and bend light itself. Their bodies stretched 40 meters from snout to tail, covered in scales that shimmered with colors that had no names. And along their spines ran ridges of what appeared to be living crystal that pulsed with inner light. Mother of God. Rodriguez breathed, his usual composure cracking, but it was what lay at the center of the valley that truly staggered them. A dragon so immense that the others looked like children beside it sprawled across the valley floor, and even from this distance, they could see that something was terribly wrong. The creature's crystalline formations were dark and cracked. Its scales had lost their luster, and its breathing, yes, it was breathing, came in labored, shuddering gasps that created small windstorms across the valley. The smaller dragons flew in frantic patterns around their fallen companion, their movements radiating distress and helplessness. Occasionally, one would land beside the giant and press its head against the massive form, and the humans could hear through their audio pickups a sound like crystal chimes breaking, a mournful cry that needed no translation. "Set us down there," Webb ordered, pointing to a flat area several hundred meters from the gathering. "Slowly and with all lights visible, I want them to see us coming. No surprises." As the shuttle descended, the dragons noticed them. Dozens of enormous heads turned toward the incoming craft, eyes that glowed with inner luminescence fixed on this strange metal object. But instead of attacking or fleeing, the dragons did something unexpected. They moved aside, creating a clear path for the shuttle to land. "They're letting us through," Chan whispered in amazement. "They want us to come closer." The shuttle touched down with a gentle bump, and for a long moment no one moved. They stared out at the scene before them, at these impossible creatures that looked back at them with what could only be described as desperate hope. Finally, Webb stood and straightened his uniform. "All right, people. Let's find out what they need, and see if humanity can help." Rodriguez opened the shuttle door, and fresh alien air rushed in, carrying with it scents of ozone and something like cinnamon. Cautiously, with weapons lowered but ready, the team stepped out onto the valley floor, the nearest dragon, its scales shading from deep blue to vibrant purple, lowered its head until it was nearly level with the humans. Up close they could see that its eyes held intelligence, deep and ancient and filled with sorrow. Dr. Tanaka's scanner chirped urgently, and she studied the display with growing astonishment. "Captain, these readings, these creatures aren't biological in the traditional sense. Their bodies are composed primarily of silicon compounds, crystalline structures arranged in patterns that shouldn't be possible. They're like living computers." The dragon before them made a sound, low and resonant, and somehow everyone understood it was a greeting, a plea, and a question all at once. Could these strange soft-skinned visitors help where the dragons themselves had failed? Webb looked from the waiting dragon to the fallen giant beyond, then back to his team. He saw determination on every face, despite the fear and uncertainty. This was why humanity explored the stars, not to conquer or to take, but to The human team moved carefully across the valley floor, their boots crunching on ground that seemed to be made of crushed gemstones rather than ordinary dirt. The dragons watched, but did not interfere, and several of the creatures had arranged themselves in a wide circle around the fallen giant, creating what looked like a living barrier, or perhaps a sacred space. Tanaka hurried ahead with her scanning equipment, her scientific curiosity temporarily overriding her caution. "This is impossible. I mean truly impossible," she muttered while her instruments recorded data faster than she could process it. "These creatures have no internal organs as we understand them, no digestive system, no circulatory system in the biological sense. Instead, they have what looks like an energy distribution network made from crystalline matrices. Commander Rodriguez kept his team positioned protectively around the scientists, but his attention was divided between potential threats and the magnificent beings that surrounded them. Up close, the dragons were even more breathtaking. Their scales caught the light and refracted it into patterns that seemed to shift and flow. And the crystalline formations along their spines hummed with barely audible frequencies that made the air itself vibrate. The Archon had deployed her linguistic analysis equipment and was carefully observing the interactions between the dragons. She noticed patterns in their movements, the way they position themselves relative to each other, the varying tones and harmonics of their vocalizations. They're communicating constantly, she reported to Webb over the comlink. Not just with sound, but through their crystalline structures. I'm picking up electromagnetic pulses, quantum resonance patterns. It's like they're talking on a dozen different frequencies at once. Captain Webb had remained near the shuttle, coordinating with the Perseverance in orbit and making sure their escape routes stayed secure. But now he moved forward to join his team at the edge of the inner circle. The fallen giant lay before them, and from this vantage point, its true size became apparent. It was easily 3 times larger than the largest creature humanity had ever encountered. Perhaps 70 or 80 meters long, with wings that even folded looked like they could blot out the sun. What's wrong with it? Webb asked quietly. Tanaka shook her head, her expression troubled. I think it's a her based on the structure. And honestly, Captain, I don't know where to start. Her crystalline matrix is failing, showing cascade fractures throughout the core structure. In human terms, it's like watching someone experience total organ failure across every system simultaneously. One of the smaller dragons approached them, moving with careful deliberation. It was the blue and purple creature that had first greeted them. And now it lowered its great head until its eyes, each one larger than a human head, were level with the Ting-chan, gasped as her equipment lit up with activity. It's trying to communicate directly with us. The dragon made a series of sounds, each one accompanied by flashes of light from its crystalline spines. Chun's translation algorithms worked frantically, trying to find patterns and meaning in the alien language. Slowly, haltingly, images began to form on Chun's display screen. Not words, but concepts, emotions, and visual data transmitted through some form of quantum entanglement that the doctor did not fully understand. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. The big one, the fallen dragon. She's called a world mother. Chun translated, her voice shaking with emotion. She's ancient, millions of years old. And she's been protecting and teaching the younger dragons for longer than human civilization has existed. They call themselves the Silicate Guardians, and they evolved from this planet's unique crystalline substrate over countless generations. More images flowed through the connection, and Chun struggled to interpret them. They're not like us. They don't build tools or machines because they don't need to. Each dragon is essentially a living computer, able to manipulate energy and matter through quantum processes we can barely detect. They're post-technological, having evolved beyond the need for external technology. But if they're so advanced, why can't they heal their own? Rodriguez asked, voicing the question everyone was thinking. The dragon before them made a mournful sound, and new images appeared on Chen's screen. These were darker, more violent ships descending from space, weapons firing. The World Mother, fighting to protect her children, while strange vessels tried to harvest the planet's crystalline formations. She was attacked, Chun whispered. Decades ago, maybe 50 or 60 years by my estimate. Ships came from another species, something called the Viridian Compact. They wanted to mine the living crystals for weapons manufacturing. The World Mother and her children drove them away, but not before she sustained terrible damage. Tanaka moved closer. Her scanners focused on the World Mother's damaged crystalline structures. The wounds never healed, couldn't heal. It looks like the weapons use some kind of resonance technology that disrupted her quantum matrix at the fundamental level. She's been dying slowly ever since, and her children lack the knowledge to repair her. How is that possible? Webb demanded. If they're so advanced, because they evolved beyond needing that knowledge, Chen interrupted, her understanding growing as more data flowed from the dragon. Imagine if all humans suddenly lost the ability to get sick within a few generations. All our medical knowledge would become mythology. These dragons haven't needed to understand their own internal repair systems for millions of years because they've never been damaged like this before. The World Mother held all that ancient knowledge, and now she's too weak to share it. Sergeant Santos had been silent up until now, watching and recording everything with her tactical cameras, but something caught her attention. "Doctor, look at how they're arranged," she called out. "The smaller dragons, see how they're positioned around the World Mother?" Everyone turned to look, and Santos was right. The dragons had arranged themselves in what looked like a specific geometric pattern, each one positioned at precise points around the fallen giant. Tanaka's eyes widened as her scanners picked up what Santos had noticed visually. They're forming a circuit of living power distribution network. They've been channeling their own energy into the World Mother, trying to keep her alive. That's why the distress call kept getting stronger. As she weakens, they have to put more of themselves into sustaining her, which amplifies the signal. "How long does she have?" Webb asked, dreading the answer. Tanaka checked her readings twice before responding. Based on the rate of crystalline decay and energy depletion, less than 2 days, probably closer to 40 hours. After that, the cascade failure will be irreversible. A heavy silence fell over the team as they absorbed this information. They had traveled across the galaxy searching for new worlds and instead had found beings in desperate need. Creatures of impossible beauty and intelligence facing a loss that would devastate their entire civilization. The blue and purple dragon that had been communicating with them made another sound. Softer this time, and new images appeared on Chun's display, images of hope, of gratitude that someone had finally answered their call, of desperate faith that these strange visitors might somehow help where the dragons themselves could not. Webb looked at his team, seeing determination mixed with uncertainty on every face. Then he looked up at the dragon before them and at the others watching from around the circle. Finally, his gaze settled on the World Mother, this ancient being who had protected her children for millions of years and now lay dying from wounds inflicted by another species' greed. "We're going to help," he said firmly. "I don't know how yet, but humanity didn't come to the stars to watch innocent beings die. We'll figure something out." He tapped his link. "Perseverance, this is Webb. We have a situation down here, and I need you to start thinking outside the box. I'm sending up all the data we've collected. Get every engineer, every scientist, every creative thinker we have working on this problem. We have less than 2 days to save something impossible, so let's get impossible done." Rodriguez stepped forward. "Captain, we have no idea if we can even help. We're talking about a life form completely unlike anything we've ever encountered." "Then we'll learn," Webb interrupted. "Fast. Commander, humanity's greatest strength has always been our ability to adapt and our refusal to accept the impossible. Those dragons drove off an invasion to protect their world and their mother. The least we can do is try to return the favor." Dr. Chun was already working, her algorithms processing the quantum data the dragons were sharing. Tanaka had deployed her entire array of sensors and was building a detailed map of the World Mother's crystalline structure. Santos and her Marines were establishing a perimeter and setting up equipment to create a field hospital of sorts. The blue and purple dragon watched the humans work with what could only be described as hope in its ancient eyes. Perhaps, just perhaps, The Perseverance descended through the atmosphere 12 hours later, its massive hull reflecting the alien sun as it settled onto reinforced landing struts in the valley. Captain Webb had made the decision to bring the entire ship down rather than just sending supplies, reasoning that they might need every resource and every mind available for what they were. ATTMPTINGDR Patel emerged from the ship's main cargo bay leading a team of 20 engineers carrying equipment that had never been designed for this purpose. The ship's chief engineer was a short woman with sharp eyes and graying hair who had spent 30 years solving impossible problems in deep space. "Show me what we're working with," she demanded without preamble. And Tanaka led her to the World Mother. Patel stood silently for 5 minutes, her practiced eyes taking in every detail while her portable scanner fed her data. Finally, she spoke. "This is insane. You know that, right? We're talking about repairing quantum crystalline matrices in a living being using equipment designed for starship maintenance. Can it be done?" Webb asked. Patel grinned fiercely. "Captain, I once kept a fusion reactor running with spare parts from a food processor and sheer stubbornness. This is definitely insane, but insane and impossible aren't the same thing." The team worked through the night and into the following day, driven by the knowledge that time was running out. The World Mother's condition had worsened visibly. Her crystalline formations had gone completely dark, and her breathing had become shallow and irregular. Chun made the breakthrough around hour 20 by correlating the dragon's geometric positioning with energy flow patterns. They're not just randomly arranged, they're creating an amplification network. Each dragon positioned at a quantum resonance node, channeling energy through specific pathways, like a living circuit board, Rodriguez observed, studying the holographic display Chen had created. Exactly. Chen's excitement was infectious. And if we can understand their natural energy distribution system, we can work with it rather than against it. The dragons have been keeping the World Mother alive through brute force. But what if we could use their network more efficiently? Patel immediately saw the implications. We don't try to heal her directly. We integrate our technology with theirs. Use the dragons' natural abilities to channel power while we provide the raw energy and repair mechanisms they lack. Dr. Tanaka pulled up her detailed scans of the World Mother's damaged crystalline matrix. The fractures extend deep into her core structure. The weapons that hit her didn't just damage the surface. They disrupted her quantum coherence at the fundamental level. It's like her entire molecular structure is out of phase with itself. "Nanits," Patel declared suddenly. "We use medical nanits to repair the crystalline fractures from the inside out. They're designed to work at the molecular level and can be programmed to follow specific repair patterns. But we've never used them on silicon-based life." Tanaka protested. "The programming would have to be completely rewritten, so we rewrite it," Patel interrupted. "We have the dragons themselves to guide us. They know what the World Mother's structure should look like, even if they can't repair it themselves. We get them to show us the healthy patterns and program the nanits to replicate those structures." A heated debate erupted among the team about ethics and protocols. Several crew members argued passionately that they should not interfere with an alien species' natural processes, that humanity had no right to impose their technology on beings they barely understood. Dr. Chen ended the debate with a single statement. "The World Mother's condition isn't natural. It's the result of violence from another species. We wouldn't be interfering with nature. We'd be correcting an injustice." Webb made the final decision. "We proceed, but carefully, methodically, and only with the dragons' cooperation. This is their mother, their choice. If they refuse our help, we respect that." Through Chun's translation equipment, they explained their plan to the blue and purple dragon who had become their primary contact. The dragon listened, its crystalline spines flickering with what Chen interpreted as intense thought processing. Then turned and communicated with the others. The response was unanimous and immediate. Every dragon in the valley raised their heads and vocalized in harmony. A sound so powerful it made the ground tremble and brought tears to several crew members' eyes. "They're saying yes," Chun translated, her voice thick with emotion. "More than yes, they're saying thank you, and they're pledging that if we succeed, the dragons will remember humanity forever." The preparation took another 8 hours. Patel and her team fabricated massive power conduits that ran from the Perseverance's fusion reactors to the valley floor. They positioned distribution nodes at each location where a dragon stood, creating an integrated network that combined human technology with dragon bioenergy. Nanet programming was perhaps the most delicate task. Tanaka worked with Chun and 3 other scientists, using quantum imaging to map healthy dragon crystalline structures, and then translating those patterns into molecular repair templates. The nanits would be injected directly into the World Mother's core fractures, where they would begin rebuilding her structure, atom by atom. Sergeant Santos had noticed something else about the dragon's positioning, and now she shared her observation with the team. "Look at the way they're arranged. It's not random geometry. They're forming what looks like a resonance chamber, and the World Mother is at the focal point." Patel studied Santos's tactical analysis, and her eyes widened. "You're right, and we're not careful. Feeding too much power into that configuration could create a feedback loop that would kill everyone in this valley, dragons and humans alike. So we need to modulate the power carefully," Rodriguez concluded. "Ramp it up gradually while monitoring the crystalline resonance. Stay below the threshold that would trigger cascade feedback, while simultaneously injecting nanits and hoping they don't reject foreign molecular structures or trigger some kind of immune response we don't understand." Tanaka added grimly. Patel laughed, though there was little humor in it. "Like I said, this is insane. But we're committed now, so let's be insane with precision." Captain Webb stood before his assembled crew and spoke quietly but firmly. "What we're attempting has never been done. We're going to try to save a life form we met less than 30 hours ago using improvised technology and incomplete understanding. People could die, humans and dragons both. But I believe this is why we came to the stars. Not just to explore, but to help. To make the universe a little bit better than we found it." He looked around at the faces watching him, engineers with oil-stained hands, scientists with exhaustion-shadowed eyes, Marines ready to defend others, even at cost to themselves, and felt pride surge through him. "We're not doing this because it's easy or safe," Webb continued. "We're doing it because someone called for help and we answered. Because these magnificent beings fought to protect their world and their family, and now it's our turn to fight for them. So let's get to work and show the universe what humanity is capable of when we refuse to accept the impossible." The crew dispersed to their stations, and the dragons, sensing that something crucial was about to begin, tightened their formation around the World Mother. The blue and purple dragon approached Webb one final time and touched its great head gently against the captain's shoulder in what was unmistakably a gesture of trust and gratitude. Patel signal? The operation began. The Perseverance's fusion reactors hummed to life and increased output, sending massive amounts of energy flowing through the conduits to the distribution nodes positioned around the valley. The dragons responded instinctively, their crystalline formations beginning to glow as they channeled and modulated the power flowing through them. "Energy flow stable," called out the monitoring station. "Dragons are integrating perfectly with the system." Tanaka deployed the first wave of nanits, injecting millions of microscopic repair machines into the World Mother's damaged crystalline matrix. On her display screen, she watched as they began navigating through quantum pathways too small for human eyes to see, seeking out fractures and beginning the painstaking work of molecular Reconstruction. The World Mother shuddered, and for one terrifying moment everyone thought they had failed, that their intervention had caused more harm than good. But then her crystalline formations flickered with faint light, the first illumination they had shown in days. "It's working," someone shouted, and across the valley humans and dragons. The operation continued through the night as human technology and dragon biology worked together in ways that should have been impossible. The valley had become a theater of light and sound, with energy arcing between distribution nodes while the dragons vocalized in harmonics that resonated with the World Mother's crystalline structure. Dr. Tanaka barely left her monitoring station, watching as waves of nanite spread through the damaged matrices and began their microscopic reconstruction work. "The initial fractures are sealing," she reported, exhaustion making her voice rough. "But we're only addressing surface damage. The core disruption goes deeper than we anticipated. A power surge nearly destroyed everything in the 14th hour." The World Mother's crystalline formations suddenly began drawing energy at 10 times the expected rate, overloading 3 distribution nodes and causing feedback that threw 2 engineers to the ground with electrical burns. "Shut it down!" someone screamed, but Patel countermanded the order. "No, she's stabilizing herself. Her systems are coming back online and trying to establish equilibrium. Increase power output by 30% and reroute through backup conduits." It was a gamble that could have killed them all, but Patel's instincts proved correct. The surge stabilized and the World Mother's crystalline patterns began glowing with steady light for the first time since the humans had arrived, but the crisis had cost them. The 2 injured engineers needed immediate medical attention. Several key pieces of equipment had been damaged beyond field repair, and most critically, they had burned through power reserves faster than anticipated. "At this rate, we'll drain the fusion cores completely in another 10 hours, reported the power management team. "After that, we'll have nothing left." Captain Webb faced an agonizing choice: continue the operation and risk leaving the Perseverance completely powerless in an uncharted system, or halt the procedure before the World Mother was fully healed and hope that what they had accomplished would be enough. Rodriguez saw his captain's dilemma and spoke quietly. "We didn't come this far to do half the job. The ship can drift powerless for weeks if necessary. The World Mother can't wait that long." Webb nodded slowly. "Continue the operation, commit everything we have." The blue and purple dragon seemed to understand what the humans had just decided and made a sound that brought every dragon in the valley to attention. Suddenly, the geometric pattern shifted as more dragons flew in from the surrounding mountains, dozens of them taking positions that expanded the resonance network beyond what the humans had designed. Chun's translation equipment lit up with activity. They're bringing reinforcements, extending the network to help channel power more efficiently. They understand we're running out of energy and they're compensating. The expanded network changed everything. With more dragons sharing the load, the power distribution became smoother and more efficient. What would have drained the ship's cores in 10 hours might now last for 20 or even 30, but time was still their enemy, and the World Mother's core damage remained. Tanaka deployed the second and third waves of nanites, pushing the tiny machines deeper into the crystalline matrices where the quantum disruption was most severe around hour 23. Something extraordinary happened. Sergeant Santos, who had been documenting everything with her tactical recording equipment, noticed it first. "Dr. Chun, the dragons, watch how they're moving." The dragons had begun shifting position in subtle ways, their movements creating rippling patterns across the resonance network. It looked almost like they were dancing, though Santos realized it was more like breathing, a coordinated rhythm that pulsed through the entire system. "They're creating a resonance cascade," Chun breathed in wonder. "Not destructive like we feared, but constructive. They're using harmonics to amplify the repair work at the quantum level. My God, they're teaching us how their biology works in real time. Patel immediately adjusted the power flow to match the rhythm the dragons had established, and the results were dramatic. The nanite's repair speed increased by orders of magnitude. As they rode the resonance waves deeper into the World Mother's structure, "We might actually pull this off," Patel whispered, hardly daring to believe it. Then disaster struck. One of the main power conduits exploded without warning, showering the area with sparks and molten metal. The explosion was caused by a microscopic fracture that had gone undetected. Stressed beyond its limits by the sustained high-energy flow, 3 people were injured. 1 critically, and the power network lost coherence. Without that conduit, the entire system began to fail. Rodriguez didn't hesitate. He grabbed a replacement conduit section and charged toward the damaged area, ignoring the searing heat and arcing electricity. His hands were burned badly as he manually connected the replacement, but he didn't stop until the circuit was complete. Santos reached him seconds later, already applying emergency medical foam to his burns. "Commander, you need treatment." "Not until this is finished," Rodriguez gritted out through clenched teeth. Restart the power flow. The operation continued with renewed desperation. Everyone knew they were approaching the absolute limits of what humans and dragons could endure. Equipment was failing, power reserves dwindling, and exhaustion threatened to cause fatal mistakes around hour 31. Diane Tanaka made a discovery that changed everything. "The nanites have reached the core fracture zone," she announced, her voice tight with concentration. "But the quantum disruption is worse than we thought. The weapons that hit her didn't just damage her structure. They phased portions of her quantum matrix out of alignment with our universe. Some parts of her exist partially in other dimensional states. Can we fix that?" Webb demanded. "I don't know," Tanaka admitted. "It's like trying to repair something that's half here and half somewhere else. Our nanites can't bridge that gap." The blue and purple dragons suddenly moved, approaching Tanaka's station with deliberate purpose. Through Chun's translation equipment came a series of images and concepts that took several minutes to interpret. "They're offering to help at the quantum level," Chun translated, awe in her voice. "The dragons can manipulate quantum states directly through their crystalline structures. If we can show them exactly where the phasing damage is, they think they can help bring those portions of the world Mother back into normal space." It required another round of desperate improvisation. Tanaka used her scanners to create a quantum map of the damaged regions. Then Chun translated that data into patterns the dragons could understand. The blue and purple dragon studied the information, then communicated with its fellows. What happened next would be talked about for generations all. The dragons in the valley began to glow with intense light as they channeled their quantum manipulation abilities through the resonance network. The air itself seemed to shimmer and warp as they worked on levels of reality. Humans could barely perceive the World Mother suddenly convulsed, her massive body shuddering as portions of her structure were forcibly pulled back into normal space. The strain on the dragons was enormous. Several collapsed from exhaustion, and even the strongest showed signs of dangerous depletion. "It's working!" Tanaka shouted over the roar of energy. "The phased regions are stabilizing." But the effort required more power than they had. The fusion cores were draining at catastrophic rates, and the conduits were glowing red-hot from the overload. "Captain, we're going to lose power in 3 minutes," warned the engineering station. "If that happens while the quantum realignment is incomplete, everyone who isn't essential to the operation, get clear," Webb ordered. "And someone get those injured people to safety now." The final 2 minutes stretched like hours. Equipment exploded, circuits failed, and several more people were injured by flying debris or electrical discharge. Santos dragged an unconscious engineer away from a collapsing power node. while her marines worked frantically to evacuate the wounded. The blue and purple dragon's glow had become painfully bright, and through the quantum connection, Chun could feel its exhaustion and pain. But it refused to stop. 10 seconds. Someone shouted 5 seconds. The valley blazed with impossible light as every dragon and every human pushed beyond their limits, and then the World Mother's eyes opened. They were vast and luminous, filled with intelligence that predated humanity by millions of years. Those ancient eyes swept across the valley, taking in the dragons arrayed around her in protective formation and the strange small creatures who had nearly destroyed themselves trying to help. The World Mother drew breath, deep and strong, and her crystalline formations blazed with light that illuminated the entire valley like a second sun. The quantum matrices had stabilized, the fractures had sealed, and the phasing damage had been corrected at the same moment. The Perseverance's fusion cores shut down completely, drained beyond safety margins. The ship went dark and silent, its power exhausted in the service of saving a life. Captain Webb collapsed to his knees, watching as the World Mother slowly rose to her feet. She was magnificent beyond description, her healing complete, her power restored. Then something impossible happened. The World Mother's consciousness touched the minds of every human present. They experienced a flood of memories and sensations, millions of years. Three weeks had passed since the World Mother's healing, and the valley had been transformed into something that looked less like a campsite and more like the meeting place of two civilizations learning to understand each other. The Perseverance sat dark and powerless, while its crew worked around the clock to repair systems and slowly rebuild their energy reserves using solar collectors and emergency backup generators. Commander Rodriguez flexed his bandaged hands carefully, the skin still tender beneath the medical wrappings, but healing well thanks to the ship's advanced treatment protocols. He stood near the edge of the human encampment, watching young dragons practice flying under their mother's watchful gaze. And he felt a peace he had rarely known in his years of military service. Captain Webb emerged from the command tent where he had been finalizing reports that would change humanity's approach to space exploration forever. "The Council accepted my recommendations," he announced to the gathered senior staff. "Every survey ship will now carry specialists in xenobiology, linguistics, and cultural diplomacy as standard crew, and the primary mission parameters have been expanded from exploration and colonization to include first contact protocols and interspecies assistance." Chun looked up from her work with a tired but satisfied smile. She had spent every waking hour documenting the dragon's language and culture, building a comprehensive database that would allow future humans to communicate with silicon-based life forms. "Humanity is finally growing up," she observed. "We're learning that the universe doesn't need us to conquer it. It needs us to help take care of it." The World Mother herself had proven to be an inexhaustible source of knowledge and wisdom. Through the quantum connection she had established with select humans, she shared information that would advance humanity's understanding of physics, biology, and quantum mechanics by centuries. She explained that the dragons were not merely creatures, but guardians, ancient protectors of worlds who had lost their way over millions of years, forgetting their purpose as they evolved beyond the need for action. We became complacent. The World Mother communicated through the translation link Chun had refined. We watched civilizations rise and fall, observed beauty and horror across the galaxy, but we stopped participating. We forgot that observation without action is merely voyeurism, that knowledge without compassion is meaningless. She explained that humanity had reminded the dragons of something essential. They had lost the willingness to act, even when action was difficult or dangerous. The refusal to walk away from those in need, regardless of the cost, in return for the healing that had saved her life. The World Mother offered humanity 3 gifts that would forever change their place in the universe. The first gift was knowledge. She shared star charts accumulated over epochs, showing the locations of 12 other worlds where ancient beings like herself existed, some sleeping, some suffering, all waiting for someone to remember they were there. She provided information about the Viridian Compact and other hostile species humanity might encounter, along with details about peaceful civilizations who might welcome contact. But be warned, the World Mother cautioned. The Viridian Compact does not forgive or forget. They will learn that you saved me, and they will see you as enemies because you prevented them from claiming this world's resources. Your compassion has made you powerful allies, but also dangerous enemies. Webb accepted this with grim determination. We can't let fear of consequences stop us from doing what's right. If helping those in need makes enemies, then we'll face those enemies when they come. The second gift was alliance. The World Mother declared that the dragons would reawaken their ancient purpose and become active guardians once more, but this time with human partners at their side. Young dragons were already preparing to leave their homeworld for the first time in millions of years, eager to explore the universe alongside these strange, soft-skinned creatures who had crossed the void to answer a distress call. The blue and purple dragon, who had been humanity's first contact, would accompany them when the Perseverance eventually departed. It had chosen to serve as ambassador and bridge between species, and it had selected a human name for itself after studying Earth's ancient mythology: Azure. Together we will be stronger. Azure communicated through the quantum link. Dragons have power and knowledge, but humans have something we lost: the fire that drives you to help others even at great cost to yourselves. We need that fire as much as you need our strength. The third gift was the most precious and most controversial. The World Mother offered to share her quantum consciousness connection technology with humanity, allowing them to establish mental links with compatible life forms and share experiences across species. Founders Dr. Tanaka argued strongly against accepting this gift, fearing that humanity was not ready for such intimate connection with alien minds. We barely understand our own consciousness. How can we safely merge it with others? What if we lose ourselves in the process? But Chun disagreed. Every advance in human civilization has come from our willingness to connect with others, to see through different eyes and understand different perspectives. Yes, there are risks, but the potential for true understanding across species is worth those risks. The debate continued for days until Webb made the final decision. They would accept the technology, but implement it slowly and carefully, with extensive safeguards and only among volunteers who fully understood the implications. Dr. Chen was chosen as humanity's first full-time ambassador to the Dragon World. She would remain behind with a small team of scientists and diplomats, living among the dragons and learning from the World Mother while teaching the Silicate Guardians about modern humanity. The knowledge exchange would benefit both species for generations as the Perseverance's power reserves slowly rebuilt and departure day approached. A ceremony was held in the valley where everything had begun. Humans and dragons gathered together, two species who had been strangers mere weeks ago, but who now stood as partners and friends. The World Mother rose to her full, magnificent height, her crystalline formations blazing with light, and spoke words that every human present would remember forever. You came when we called, though you owed us nothing. You risked everything to save a life you had just discovered. You showed us that compassion is not weakness, but the strongest force in the universe, stronger than weapons, stronger than fear, stronger even than the passage of time itself. She lowered her great head in a gesture of respect that brought tears to many eyes. The dragons were ancient when your species first looked up at the stars and wondered what lay beyond. We have seen empires that spanned galaxies and civilizations that reshaped reality itself. But never in all our millions of years have we encountered a species quite like humanity. You are young and sometimes foolish, driven by emotions we barely understand. You fight among yourselves and make mistakes that wiser species would avoid. But you also possess something rare and precious. The ability to care deeply about others, even when logic says you should not. The stubborn refusal to accept that something is impossible. And the courage to stand against injustice, regardless of the cost. Azure spread its wings and vocalized in harmony with the World Mother. The dragons were guardians who forgot how to guard. Humanity has reminded us of our purpose. Together we will ensure that no distress call goes unanswered, that no being suffers alone, that compassion and courage light the dark places between the stars. Captain Webb stepped forward, representing all humanity. We don't know what challenges await us out there, he said simply, but we know we won't face them alone. Wherever there is need, humanity will answer, and now the dragons will answer beside us. The Perseverance lifted off 3 days later. Its fusion cores restored to minimal power, and its holds filled with crystalline data storage devices, containing knowledge beyond price. Azure flew alongside the ship as it climbed toward orbit, the first dragon to leave their homeworld in millions of years. Looking back at the planet below, Webb thought about how much had changed in such a short time. They had come searching for empty worlds to colonize, and instead found ancient wisdom and new purpose. The galaxy was not a prize to be claimed, but a community to be joined. A vast collection of lives and stories, waiting for those brave enough to listen and helping the years that followed. The story of the dragon's distress call would become legend among humanity, told and retold, until every child knew of Captain Webb and Dr. Chun, of Commander Rodriguez's burned hands and Sergeant Santos's keen observations, of Dr. Patel's impossible engineering and Dr. Tanaka's groundbreaking xenobiology, but more than a story of individuals. It became a defining moment for the entire human species. The day humanity looked at the stars and decided that their purpose was not to conquer or claim, but to answer the calls for help that echoed through the void. The World Mother watched the human ship depart and began teaching her children new stories, tales that would be passed down through dragon generations for millions of years to come. The story of the small, fragile creatures who refused to accept that anything was impossible, who crossed the empty dark to save a dying stranger, and who reminded an ancient species